Okay, so now we want to take a look at assessment, and then we're going to take a look at what do IEP goals look like related to reading instruction, what do accommodations and modifications look like when we're documenting that on the IEP. So I really want to look at reading assessment and how we can do that effectively in the secondary classroom. I love this quote by the Center on Instruction about assessment. Strong formative assessment practices are intimately linked and associated with strong instructional practices. Okay, so we know as effective teachers, right, that unless we know what students can do and can't do, we can't really target those areas where they have gaps. And so we've got to have that formative assessment that is driving our instruction. So here's a look at what a comprehensive reading assessment system would look like in a school. Okay, so at the beginning of the year, we do a general screening just to see where everyone is at. And then those students who are on track, okay, continue to receive literacy support from their content area teachers. Okay, remember, we're looking at this in terms of middle school, high school students. Okay, they're going to get their daily instruction, probably have frequent formative assessments within the classroom, and just progress monitoring with those standardized benchmark tests several times a year. Okay, at-risk students have two places they can go. One is we identify those at-risk students as those needing further targeted screening tests. Okay, so one group of students is going to be those students who need support focused primarily just on comprehension. Okay, so they're in the general ed classroom, they just need some comprehension assistance. So they're going to get that through daily instruction monitored with those formative assessments. Then we've got students who that general screening shows are really falling behind in their reading skills, or they've been on an IEP for a while, we know that they're behind. Those students are going to move into that category of needing more intensive and comprehensive reading intervention. Okay, so we're going to have some accommodations and modifications, strategies that we're using in the content area classrooms, but they're also going to be getting some pull-out, real direct reading instruction, whether it's focusing on those decoding skills that we talked about earlier, fluency, comprehension, vocabulary, any of those. Okay, then they're going to be assessed throughout the year with those formative assessments. But their overall progress is probably going to be monitored by CBMs, those curriculum-based measurements, to really help us pinpoint their progress and where they need additional supports. So I want to look at CBMs because I think CBMs play such a big role in how we determine where students are at and what kind of interventions we put in place. So I think most of you are probably familiar with this concept, curriculum-based measurements. They are standardized, so a lot of times districts develop their own CBMs or they can purchase CBMs, but they're standardized so you can determine where a student is at, okay, compared to their peers. So for example, we just had an IEP meeting for my daughter Josie, and we looked at CBM measurements for math because she has a really big gap in math right now compared to her peers. And so that CBM showed that she was about at 14% accuracy or mastery compared to her classroom peers on their January CBM. Okay, so it gives real clear information on, okay, this is where the average number of students are at, it's where they're performing, and so it gives us a good idea, okay, Josie's a couple standard deviations behind that now, right, 14%. So that means we're still doing pull-out math, just to give you an idea there, okay? CBMs have a long-term focus, so they're going to really help us look at setting some goals, having that long-term year focus, but then doing frequent assessments to give us feedback on if the intervention's working. If we're not seeing the growth that we want, then we know we're going to modify that intervention a little bit. And CBMs for reading are really good at evaluating oral fluency, so having students read out loud, counting the words per minute that they're reading, and also gives us good information on comprehension. So a lot of times CBMs are developed with those reading comprehension questions that we can ask students and really give them a good score and get a good picture of where they're at compared to their peers on their reading skills. One of the things that I used a lot when I taught for 5th grade and then when I taught 7th grade was this maze selection test. And so there's a great resource online that allows you to create these. It creates them for you if you just pull out some text, copy and paste it in there. and there's a link to that within the module. But a maze selection test is pulling out some text. You could use it from a textbook, you could type it in there, you could find it from a website, copy and paste it in there. For example, for this one I went out and thought about, okay, Winter Olympics, we're talking about that a lot in our house right now, right? I know a lot of kids are learning about it. So this one was about how the planet warming, how does that affect Winter Olympics, okay? So I pulled out some text that was ranked at like 9th grade, rated at a 9th grade reading level, plugged it in, had it determine what the reading level was for me, and then I had it create the maze selection test. So it pulls out words out of the text and it gives students choice to make. Okay, so this is just another quick and easy assessment that allows you to look at decoding skills and comprehension. And you can make it with any text that you have. So you can even be testing students out of information out of the textbook just to see how they're navigating that textbook text. So this is a really good resource. I really encourage you to look at this website because it's super easy to use. And like I said, you can create a maze test for any text that you have. So one of the things I want us to think about is how do we write IEP goals for secondary students? And we're going to look at this through all the content areas and how that impacts our IEP development. So if we have a student that's struggling with decoding, one of the things that we can do is write a goal for them using strategies to help them decode. So for example, in this IEP goal, we're looking at if we give Johnny text on his instructional level, will he use context clues to determine the meaning of unfamiliar words? Okay, and we're going to measure that with written work samples. That just gives you an idea of kind of a decoding goal. When we look at comprehension, we're going to look at, okay, can they read the material and answer some questions for us? So when we give Johnny grade level material, can he answer factual questions like who, what, where, when, why, how? Okay, 4 out of 5 times as measured by teacher observations. Okay, that's a good comprehension goal. Fluency is another big thing that I think we still want to focus on with these kids. If we see that they are not fluent readers, it's really beneficial to have a goal and work on fluency. So here we're working on fluency. Joshua is a 6th grader, okay? But we're going to focus on those 5th grade sight words. So we want to read those 5th grade sight words aloud accurately 85% of the time. Again, remember I said he's in 6th grade. Okay, so we do have a 5th grade sight word list that we're targeting there. On the next one, you can see this is also related to fluency. We're looking at 5th grade level reading material. Joshua will read sentences aloud with 85% word accuracy at 125 words per minute. So we're really targeting that fluency there. We're going to work on that because we have a goal for it. Okay, so I just think these are important things for you to consider. And you're going to work on IEP goals when you look at the case study as it relates to reading. The other thing that's really important as we're developing those IEPs is looking at accommodations and modifications for reading. So what can we list for these students that have a real reading deficit? So one of the things we can do is say that we need to have text with a lower grade reading level. And we can identify what that reading level would be. Okay. We can include in the accommodations and modification books on tape, read aloud technology, ebooks that will read aloud to them, any of those things where we're really using technology. You would also want to include that as part of an assistive technology plan within the IEP. Even something as simple as on homework, identifying that the parent can read the content out loud to the student at home. That's a simple one to include on a kid that's really struggling. And that gets to that question that the book talks about a lot is, are we reading to learn or are we learning to read? Well, in some of these content-specific classes, we're reading to learn, right? So we need to take that reading deficit issue out of the picture so we can ensure the student is learning the content. So including something like that, that it gives the parents kind of some freedom to provide that assistance at home is helpful. Or even including maybe a para allowing to read the content out loud in the classroom. Extended time, it's always a common accommodation that we use, but it's really helpful for those kids that struggle to read. And even just an adjusted workload. So, modifying the amount of reading in those content areas when we can, but still ensuring that the learning is occurring on those specific subjects is really important. So next steps for you. I want you to take a look at those resources in the module. There's some really great resources there. And then I want you to read about the assistive technology tools for literacy. And then finally, you will complete that case study activity. It's really important, and I will reiterate this in the case study video, that you're taking all of these pieces in. The textbook reading, the resources, these instructional videos, all of that information in, and combining it in your case study to have a really good, effective case study. Okay? So again, all of this information that I'm providing you is really important. Okay? It's going to play a role in that activity and you being able to do that activity effectively. So please take time to look at those resources. And remember, I'm always glad to provide feedback or let me know if you have any questions.